Welcome to another deep dive. We're tackling a topic today that I think a lot of you have been asking about.
Oh, yeah, this one's going to be fun.
Pirates.
You guys sent in some amazing source material in Chinese.
Yeah, and just going through it all, I can already tell.
It can be wild.
Like, there's so much more to these maritime outlaws than meets the eye.
Absolutely. I mean, most people, they think of pirates.
Yeah.
They think of the Caribbean,
Right.
Golden Age of Piracy.
Probably Blackbeard and all that.
But what we're going to find out today is that this history,
It goes way back.
it's global.
Yeah, and these sources, they reveal connections and stories that you just...
Wouldn't believe.
Yeah, so today,
We're going to chart a course through time,
we're going to be sailing from the earliest records of piracy.
through different eras, different regions.
And I, for one, cannot wait to see what we uncover.
Well, you know what's interesting?
What's that?
The Guinness World Record
For what?
for the earliest documented pirate activity.
Oh, really?
It comes from a 3,300-year-old clay tablet
Yeah.
found in Egypt.
A clay tablet? Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's older than any pirate ship I've ever seen in a movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it describes this group.
Yeah.
They were called the Luca,
The Luca?
and they were raiding Alashia, which we know today as Cyprus.
Okay.
But it's not just any old document.
What is it then?
It's a letter from the Cypriot king to the pharaoh.
Oh, wow. So, like, a head of state to a head of state?
Exactly.
Complaining about pirates.
Ooh, assuring him that the pirates
Okay.
weren't Cypriot.
Oh, so he's like, don't blame us.
It wasn't us.
It wasn't us. Those pirates are bad.
It wasn't us.
I mean, imagine being so worried about getting blamed for pirates that you send a message chiseled into clay
To the pharaoh.
to the pharaoh, like, hey, it wasn't us, it was those guys.
Yeah, I love that detail.
It really puts the long history of piracy into perspective.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It shows that this has been around as long as seafaring itself.
So
Even the
guys
mighty Egyptians,
had to deal with pirates.
they had to contend with these raiders.
So pirates weren't just some romantic figures, from the age of exploration.
No.
They've been causing trouble for millennia.
For a very, very long time.
Oh, man. Okay, so let's move on to a group that actually does get pretty romanticized.
All right.
The Vikings.
The Vikings.
When we think of Vikings, you picture those iconic horned helmets,
Of course.
big ships.
Fierce warriors.
Yeah, bursting with fierce warriors. But were they really pirates in, like, the traditional sense?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Because while they certainly engaged in raiding and plundering, their tactics
Yeah.
and motivations,
They were a little bit different.
they're quite distinct, yeah.
Yeah.
They mainly targeted coastal villages and monasteries,
Monasteries, okay.
especially the ones known to have poorly defended riches.
Exactly.
I've always wondered about that.
Yeah.
Why were monasteries always getting hit? Like, were they just seen as easy pickings?
Well, part of it was definitely the location.
Okay. A lot of monasteries, they were built on coastlines,
Okay.
for seclusion, self-sufficiency.
Makes sense, yeah. Peace and quiet.
Right. But ironically,
That made them vulnerable.
to seafaring raiders.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like they were unintentionally advertising themselves as a prime target.
Right. Come raid our peaceful monastery.
We have a beautiful view,
Plenty of treasure.
and we're totally undefended.
Help yourself.
Oh, man. But it wasn't just the location.
No, you have to remember the Vikings, they had a different religious belief system.
Okay.
So, they didn't feel the same kind of guilt
Right.
about plundering places dedicated to a different god.
So that plays into it, too.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating because you see this evolution with the Vikings.
What do you mean?
Over time, they went from just raiding to conquering.
Wow.
And eventually, their bloodlines,
Yeah.
they mix with European nobility.
No way. So these fearsome raiders,
Yeah.
they ended up having a big impact
Huge impact.
on the societies they initially plundered.
It's true.
Wow, that's quite a historical twist.
It is.
Okay, so let's fast forward a few centuries
Right.
to the era that I think we most associate with pirates,
Let's do it.
the Golden Age of Piracy.
Ah, yes, the Golden Age.
What really set this period apart?
One of the most significant factors
Okay.
was the emergence of state-sanctioned piracy.
Wait, so the governments were in on it?
In a way, yes. So during this time, you have countries like England.
Yeah.
They started issuing these things called letters of marque.
Letters of marque, like, I've heard of those.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Sure. So
What
basically,
were they exactly?
imagine it's like a license granted by the government,
Okay.
allowing private citizens
Yeah.
to attack and capture enemy ships.
So you're basically deputizing private citizens.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a way for these countries to bolster their naval power.
Without having to spend the money.
Without building huge fleets. Yeah, essentially.
They were outsourcing piracy.
They were outsourcing piracy.
That's amazing, but wasn't that risky?
It was.
Like, how do you control people who are basically given free rein to plunder?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And that's where the book, The Invisible Hook.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it argues that contrary to this image of pirates as just chaotic outlaws,
Yeah.
they actually had these surprisingly sophisticated systems.
Really?
Yeah, like self-governance, economic cooperation.
So they weren't just a bunch of, rogues running wild.
Not at all.
Wow.
These licensed privateers, they had to operate within certain guidelines.
Okay.
And a portion of their loot had to be shared.
With the crown?
With the crown.
So the government gets their cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a system that in some ways benefited both sides.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this era earned that title, Golden Age.
Right.
I mean, it was a time of exploration, opportunity, and let's be honest.
Whole lot of plundering.
Whole lot of plunder.
It was just incredible upheaval and change. Empires vying for control of the seas.
Oh, man.
Vast riches being transported across the globe.
And in that chaos,
That's where you get
figures like Blackbeard.
Blackbeard.
He's almost become like a mythical figure.
He has.
But what was he really like?
Well, he was a master of image,
Okay.
psychological warfare.
Oh, tell me more about this.
Blackbeard, he cultivated this terrifying persona.
Okay.
I mean, he had this thick black beard
Right.
interwoven with lit fuses.
What lit fuses in his beard?
Lit fuses in his beard.
That's crazy.
And then 6 pistols strapped across his chest.
Okay, I gotta ask about the Six Pistols.
All right, shoot.
Was that just for show, or was there a practical reason for having so many firearms?
Oh, it was all practicality.
Okay.
Remember flintlock pistols back then? Single-shot weapons.
Oh, right. So you fire once.
That's it.
Then you need another pistol.
Exactly. Having multiple pistols.
Yeah.
That ensured that he could maintain...
A sustained rate of fire. So it wasn't about looking cool.
No.
It was about survival.
It was about survival.
Then even in death,
Even in
he's
death.
cleared.
A spectacle.
Tell me.
So he was killed in this fierce battle
Yeah.
with the British Navy.
Okay.
They took his severed head
Oh, my goodness.
and they displayed it as a warning
A warning to other pirates.
to other would-be pirates like, don't mess with us.
Oh, man. I can only imagine how chilling that sight must have been.
Chilling indeed.
And then, of course,
There's the legend that his headless body
Uh-huh.
swam around his ship several times before finally sinking beneath the waves.
Now, that's a story that would definitely strike fear into the heart of any sailor.
Wouldn't it?
Oh, man. Okay, so it's fascinating how these tales of brutality and spectacle,
Right.
they became so intertwined with the image of pirates.
Absolutely.
But it's also important to remember that piracy wasn't just limited to the Atlantic.
That's a great point.
There were pirates all over the world,
All over the world.
like the Barbary pirates.
Ah, the Barbary pirates.
They operated in the Mediterranean, right?
That's right.
And they provide a really compelling example of how piracy,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about greed.
It could be driven by a complex mix of motivations,
Oh, absolutely.
including profit
Of course.
and religious zeal.
Oh, wow. Okay, so tell me more about them. What made the Barbary pirates so unique?
Well, they weren't just interested in plundering ships.
Okay.
They also captured Europeans
Oh, wow.
and sold them into slavery
What?
in North Africa.
That's a side of piracy that we often forget about.
We do, and they even had this unique system
For what?
for assessing the value of their captives.
What was it?
They would examine the teeth
The teeth.
of white slaves,
Okay.
believing that good teeth
Yeah.
indicated good health
Okay.
and a higher potential for ransom.
So your smile
Your smile.
could literally determine your fate.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
It just highlights how even these seemingly insignificant details,
Could have huge consequences.
huge consequences in the world of piracy.
It's amazing how these historical accounts,
I know.
they reveal all these intricate details,
Yeah.
the complexities of a life that we often just romanticize.
Yeah, we do.
But as we know, piracy didn't end with Blackbeard
Right.
or the Barbary pirates.
No.
It continued.
It continued to evolve.
Yeah.
Adapting to new technologies.
Yeah, finding new footholds.
New places all over the world.
I'm so curious to explore how piracy persisted
Me too.
and transformed
Yeah.
in the centuries that followed.
It's going to be a fascinating journey.
It's clear that there's much more to uncover in this deep dive.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
Stay with us.
We'll be right back. It really did. Piracy's got this remarkable ability to adapt,
I mean, yeah, we've seen it already, going way back.
Right, back to the Egyptians. And speaking of adapting,
Yeah.
the source material you provided,
Mm-hmm.
it talks a bit about 19th century Hong Kong.
Oh,
And you might be surprised to learn that this bustling trade hub,
you think of Hong Kong, you think,
modern,
cosmopolitan city.
yeah,
It's hard to picture it as like a hotbed for pirate activity.
right. But with all that trade flowing in and out of the port,
Yeah, I guess it makes
there's
sense.
this natural
For
magnet
pirates.
for pirates. Yeah, from all sorts of different backgrounds. Almost like,
Almost like multinational gangs of the sea.
exactly. So
Yeah.
not your
Not your traditional image.
traditional image of pirates loyal to a particular flag or a nation.
Right. So what were they after in Hong Kong?
Well, mainly they were targeting British trading ships. And these sources actually,
Yeah.
they mention this one attack,
Okay.
pretty audacious,
All right.
involving 36 pirate ships
36 ships.
against a single British vessel.
Hold on. 36 to 1. That sounds like something out of a movie. How could one ship,
Well, it was a different era.
even so?
Like, it was a different era, and that's where technology comes
All
in.
right.
Because the British, they responded
Okay.
by sending in 2 steam-powered warships.
2 against 36.
2 against 36.
Even with steam power, that still doesn't seem like a fair fight.
No. And those 2 warships, they absolutely
What?
decimated the pirate fleet. It was
They wiped them out?
a decisive victory.
Wow.
And it really underscored, I think,
Why?
the changing landscape of naval warfare. You know?
Right. So those traditional wooden pirate ships.
No match.
You just outgunned.
Outgunned, outmaneuvered.
Yeah.
No match for the speed and firepower of these new modern behemoths.
That's incredible. It's almost like
Yeah,
symbolic, that battle.
I think so.
Like the end of an era.
Yeah, like the old ways of piracy.
It really swept aside.
By technology, by progress.
By progress, exactly.
Wow. So that's a clear signal then
I think so.
that the days of,
Yeah.
traditional pirate fleets engaging in these large-scale battles,
Yeah.
they were numbered.
They were over, but like
Well,
we've seen,
Throughout history, piracy,
it doesn't go away.
it rarely disappears entirely.
It just changes.
It finds new ways to operate.
Right. It adapts. And speaking of adapting
Yes.
our sources,
Yeah.
they also talk about piracy
Yeah.
in the Strait of Malacca.
Ah, the Strait of Malacca.
Specifically, around Singapore.
Right.
And I remember reading that Singapore itself
Mhm.
used to have a reputation as a bit of a pirate haven.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any truth to that?
There is, yeah. In the 19th century,
Okay.
Singapore, particularly the area we know today as Sentosa Island,
Sentosa, wow.
was a notorious pirate stronghold.
I mean, that's hard to believe considering what it is today.
I know, right? A safe and prosperous city-state.
So what happened? What led to such a dramatic transformation? How did Singapore shake off its pirate past?
Well, it took a concerted effort
Okay.
by the governments of Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia.
So a regional effort.
A regional effort. They
Yeah.
realized that maritime security, it was crucial for economic growth.
Makes sense. I mean, piracy disrupts trade routes. It discourages investment.
Exactly.
It's not exactly a recipe for economic prosperity.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And thankfully,
Yeah.
those efforts, they were largely successful.
So they managed to drive the pirates out.
For the most part, yeah.
Okay.
But
There's always a but
there's always a but. The Strait of Malacca, it remains a challenging area
to secure.
to secure completely, yeah.
Yeah.
Even as recently as this year,
Really?
there have been reports of pirate attacks
Still.
still in the region.
So even with all our modern technology,
It's true.
international cooperation,
Hmm.
piracy still poses a threat.
It does, yeah, particularly
Every-
for ships
Carrying what?
carrying valuable cargo.
Right.
It just highlights the ongoing challenges
Mhm.
of maintaining maritime security
Right.
and the persistence of piracy in certain parts of the world.
It really is. It's a reminder that
Mm.
even in our interconnected, globalized world,
So
the age-old problem of piracy,
it hasn't vanished.
it hasn't gone away. And sadly,
Yeah.
speaking of modern-day piracy,
Mm-hmm.
we can't overlook the recent resurgence
Right.
of activity in the Caribbean.
It's true. It's really a tragic consequence
Of what?
of the ongoing political and economic turmoil
Right.
in Venezuela.
Venezuela, yeah.
Well,
That's heartbreaking. What's driving this surge in pirate activity?
well, desperation, primarily.
Okay.
Venezuelan fishermen
Mm-hmm.
facing, extreme hardship.
At home?
At home, They've increasingly turned to piracy
as a way to survive.
as a way to survive. They've been targeting tourist boats, stealing valuables, even engaging in more violent acts.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it?
It is.
That piracy, it's
Yeah.
often a symptom of deeper societal issues.
Absolutely.
Right? When people are struggling to survive,
Yeah,
they may resort to desperate measures,
they do.
even if it means breaking the law.
It's true, and it really underscores the fact that piracy, it isn't just a historical curiosity.
Right.
It's a complex problem.
With real-world consequences.
Real-world consequences that continue to affect people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about kind of the external factors that contribute to piracy.
The bigger picture.
The bigger picture.
Yeah.
But what about the pirates themselves?
Okay.
You know, what can you tell us about their lives on board those ships?
Well, the reality of life at sea,
Yeah.
it was often far different
From the romantic image?
from the romanticized image, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a harsh and dangerous existence.
That's what I'm curious about. What was daily life like for a pirate? Was
Yeah.
it all like swashbuckling adventures,
Right.
drunken revelry, or was there more to it than that?
Oh, there was definitely more to it. Disease was rampant. Storms were a constant threat. The work was physically demanding. I mean, these ships, they weren't
Right.
luxury yachts.
They weren't like the Black Pearl.
No. They were cramped,
Right.
often unsanitary,
Yeah.
and just fraught with danger.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that when we see those Hollywood depictions
Oh, I know, right?
of pirates with their, flowing shirts and treasure chests overflowing with gold. It's like, come on, guys.
But while material wealth, it was definitely
Right, yeah.
a motivator.
Yeah.
There was often this deeper
A deeper what?
allure to the pilot life.
Okay.
Many were drawn to the sense of
Freedom.
freedom,
Okay.
rebellion, especially those who felt stifled by,
By societal.
societal constraints
The rules.
or lacked opportunities on land.
It's like the Wild West of the sea.
Exactly. A place where you could escape the rules.
Forge your own destiny.
Forge your own destiny. Exactly. And there's
There's a certain romantic appeal to that.
there is, even if the reality was often much harsher.
Right. And, we often associate pirates with lawlessness,
Yeah,
but they actually had
they did.
their own set of rules.
They had their own codes of conduct.
Pirates had rules.
They did.
I always pictured them as just this
I know.
chaotic bunch, every man for himself.
Yeah, but that's a common misconception.
Okay.
Pirate ships, they were surprisingly democratic.
Democratic.
Democratic captains were often elected
Elect.
by the crew, and decisions were made collectively,
So it was more like
like a maritime democracy.
than a tyrannical dictatorship.
Exactly. And they had these things called articles.
Articles.
Yeah, basically agreements,
Outlining what?
the rules of the ship, how the loot would be divided.
So it was in everyone's best interest
It was.
to work together.
To work together to maintain order.
That's fascinating. It really challenges that stereotypical image, right?
It does.
Of the tyrannical pirate captain,
Yeah.
barking orders,
Yeah.
wielding absolute power.
The reality was much more nuanced.
Right. They had to earn the respect of their crew
Absolutely.
and maintain order through
Consensus rather than brute force.
consensus rather than brute force. I like that. Okay, so
Yeah.
they had rules, democratic system, shared the loot. What about the fighting? Was it all swashbuckling sword fights,
Right.
dramatic duels,
Like we see in the movies?
like we see in the movies?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Well, sword play
Yeah,
was definitely part of their arsenal.
of course.
Pirates were much more pragmatic
Okay.
in their approach to combat.
So less Errol Flynn,
Much less Errol Flynn.
more what?
They relied heavily on intimidation
Okay.
and overwhelming numbers.
Overwhelming numbers to subdue their targets.
Exactly. Their goal,
In a ship.
capture the ship, the cargo.
Minimal casualties.
Minimal casualties, right. Because a prolonged battle.
Yeah, that could lead to
Injuries, damage to the prize,
lost loot,
lost loot. Yeah,
increased risk.
exactly. And all of that would diminish the profits.
Right, it makes sense. Why risk your own neck in a drawn-out fight if you can achieve your objective
That's right.
more efficiently through smarter tactics?
Pirates were, above all,
Pragmatic.
pragmatic. They understood that.
Quick victory.
A quick and decisive victory,
The most profitable.
most profitable and the safest.
Safest approach. I like that. So it wasn't just about, mindless violence.
Not at all. They were masters of deception.
Okay, like what?
They'd use disguises,
Okay.
false flags, to approach their targets unsuspectingly.
Like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Exactly.
So what other
That takes a certain level of
skills did pirates need?
ingenuity.
Ingenuity, yeah, to survive in such a
demanding and dangerous profession.
A demanding and dangerous profession.
They had to be skilled sailors, navigators, negotiators, fighters, all while operating outside the law.
Right.
Constantly adapting, facing the threat of
capture or death.
Capture or death, exactly. It was a
high risk.
High risk, high reward lifestyle.
High reward, yeah. So it sounds like a far cry from those tales of pirates retiring to tropical islands, living off their buried treasure.
Right, sipping margaritas on the beach.
Sipping margaritas on the beach, yeah.
For most pirates.
Yeah.
That romantic ending.
It was just a fantasy.
It was a fantasy. Met
a violent end,
either in battle at the hands of the law,
or even through mutiny within their own ranks.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that the romanticized image of piracy.
It often clashes. It clashes with
the realities. The harsh realities of the life they led.
Right. So it's important to
separate the myth
from the reality.
Piracy was a complex
and often a brutal chapter.
In human history.
Driven by
desperation, greed.
Allure of freedom.
But behind those myths and legends
were real people. Each with their own story.
Your own motivations.
Struggles. Moments of both darkness and brilliance.
It's true.
Speaking of challenging our perceptions, let's talk about that classic pirate image.
Okay.
The eye patches, peg legs, hooks.
Yes.
Were these really as common?
Good question.
As they're portrayed?
It's an interesting question. While some pirates, undoubtedly, they suffered injuries, that led to, such disfigurements, the prevalence of these images in popular culture.
It's probably more.
It's likely more literary and cinematic embellishments.
It's more about creating a visually striking
the
stereotype.
Them reflecting historical accuracy.
And historical accuracy.
Right.
Those images.
They've become like a shorthand.
They have.
For pirate.
Exactly.
In our collective imagination.
It's the visual code.
It's code,
that instantly identifies them.
Even if they weren't.
It's
widespread in reality.
Right.
But, there must have been some truth to it.
Yeah. Life at sea.
Life at sea was dangerous.
It was incredibly dangerous. Accidents were bound to happen.
And our sources, they highlight the constant threat of injuries.
Yeah.
Right? On board those ships.
Especially if a wound became infected.
Right, because that could spread quickly.
It could.
Threaten the entire crew.
Absolutely.
So what did they do in those situations? Was there any kind of...
Well, sometimes medical care available. Amputation was the only option.
Oh, wow.
It sounds brutal.
Yeah.
But it was a necessary measure.
To prevent
the spread of gangrene or other...
life-threatening infections.
Exactly.
Wow. So it was a case of lose a limb or lose your life. No wonder pirates developed a reputation for being tough and resilient.
They had to be to survive.
Okay, speaking of survival.
Okay.
One thing that always fascinates me is the depiction of pirates and their love of rum.
The rum.
Right.
Yes.
Were they really as obsessed with alcohol as they're often portrayed?
Well, there's no denying
that
rum played a significant role in pirate culture.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about
getting drunk.
Remember, fresh water, precious commodity.
On long voyages.
Exactly.
Right.
And it could easily become contaminated.
Stagnant.
So
rum was actually...
a
safer alternative.
Yeah. The alcohol content acted as a preservative.
Okay.
And some types of rum, like grog.
Yeah.
They mixed it with citrus juice.
Okay.
So you're getting a source of vitamin C.
Which helps prevent scurvy.
Exactly. So
it was a multi-purpose beverage.
It was hydration,
sanitation,
vitamin boost,
all
in one.
I
guess that explains its popularity.
It does, yeah. It wasn't just about getting a buzz.
It was about survival.
Wow.
It's amazing how historical context can change our understanding.
It does.
Of things that we might take for granted.
Things we just assume.
Right? So it reminds us to look beyond the surface.
And consider
the
The practical reasons.
Practical reasons behind certain behaviors.
Behaviors, practices.
Practices. Okay. Speaking of looking beyond the surface.
Okay.
What about that stereotype?
Yeah.
You know, pirates love to gamble.
Of course.
And chase women.
Right.
Was there any truth to that?
Well, pirates certainly indulged.
I'm sure they did, yeah.
In such activities.
When they came ashore.
When they came ashore.
Right.
But there's a reason for that.
Okay, what's the reason?
Life on a pirate ship.
Yeah.
Surprisingly regulated.
Regulated.
Gambling and women. They were strictly forbidden on board.
What?
Seriously?
Seriously.
Why? Why would they impose such restrictions?
It all boiled down to maintaining order and discipline.
Okay.
These activities were seen as potential sources of conflict.
Right, distraction. Yeah.
Which could jeopardize the safety and success of the crew.
So it's like...
It was like a pressure cooker.
They bottled up all those urges.
They bottled them up.
While at sea.
Then
let loose when they finally hit land.
They hit land.
Right.
It often played out that way.
Right. Port towns, I mean, they were known for their...
Taverns, gambling dens.
Brothels,
all catering to...
Sailors. With pent-up
energy.
Yeah.
Pockets full of loot.
It's like they went from highly structured, regimented environment, complete chaos in the blink of an eye.
It was a stark contrast.
Yeah.
And it's easy to see how
those moments of
shore-leave
fueled
stories of
pirate debauchery
and mayhem.
Exactly.
But it's important to remember.
It is.
That those wild nights ashore, they were
just one aspect
of
their lives.
They were also
skilled seamen, strategists, negotiators,
all operating
within this unique and complex
social system. Exactly. To really understand piracy, we need to
look beyond
the sensationalized story. And really delve into the nuances of their lives.
The historical context.
That shaped them.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up, right?
It is. In
the romanticized version.
The romanticized version of pirates.
Yeah.
But there was so much more.
To
their lives.
Than just drinking and carousing.
Yeah.
They were multifaceted individuals driven by this complex interplay of motivations.
Right. And their stories.
I offer us
a glimpse.
Into this.
Fascinating chapter
in human history.
That continues to capture our imaginations.
He does.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect segue into our final segment where we're going to explore some of the
lesser-known aspects
of piracy. We're going to delve into surprising stories of women pirates.
Oh, yeah.
Challenge some common misconceptions. And even touch upon
the
enduring mystery
of hidden treasures.
Welcome
back to the deep dive. We've been sailing through some fascinating history, and I'm ready to uncover even more.
Me too. And you know, one thing that really struck me in these Chinese sources...
What's that?
...is how they challenge
Okay.
This really common assumption about pirates.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What assumption are we talking about?
The idea that piracy was a man's world.
Okay.
Turns out women,
yeah,
they were far more present
than we think.
Than many historical accounts suggest.
Really? Women pirates?
Women pirates.
That's not something you see very often in like movies or books?
Not at all. And in fact, these sources, they actually emphasize how rare it was for women to be allied on pirate ships.
It was seen as bad luck.
Bad luck.
Yeah.
And a potential source of conflict.
Among the crew.
Among the crew, yeah.
So how did women break into this male-dominated world?
They had to be incredibly resourceful.
Yeah.
And determined. Often they disguise themselves as men.
What, really?
Yeah.
So like taking on male names.
Taking on male names, wearing men's clothing.
Wow.
Even fighting alongside their male counterparts.
Wow, talk about defying expectations.
I know, right?
Do we know of any like famous women pirates?
One of the most well-known is Anne Bonny.
Anne Bonny.
Yeah.
Okay.
She sailed with Calico Jack Rackham.
Okay.
In the early 18th century.
Okay.
And she was known for her ferocity in battle.
It's amazing to think of these women carving out a place for themselves.
I know.
In such a dangerous and unconventional profession.
It really is.
I mean, it speaks to their courage and desire for freedom, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Their stories, they remind us that history is full of individuals who challenge societal norms.
And speaking of challenging norms,
right.
Let's tackle another pirate myth.
Okay, let's do it.
Buried treasure.
Ah, buried treasure.
Is this a real thing, or is this just Hollywood storytelling?
The idea of buried treasure.
Yeah.
It's a captivating part of pirate lore.
It is.
And while there are some historical accounts of pirates burying their loot,
yeah,
it wasn't as common
as we think.
As you might think.
So if they weren't stashing it away for a rainy day,
right,
what did pirates typically do with their ill-gotten gains?
Most of it was spent immediate needs and desires.
Like what?
Supplies for the ship, weapons, revelry in port towns.
Of course.
And sometimes even investing in new ships or ventures.
So they were thinking about the future in some ways.
In some ways, yeah, but their lives were often short and unpredictable.
Yeah.
So there wasn't always a need
or an opportunity
to bury treasure
right.
for some distant future.
So that image of a pirate with a tattered treasure map searching for that long-lost chest of gold.
That's probably
more fiction
than fact. In most cases, yeah.
But of course, there are always
exceptions.
Exceptions.
Like the story of Captain Kidd.
Oh, Captain Kidd, yeah.
That's fueled treasure hunts for centuries.
Didn't he supposedly bury some of his treasure on an island?
He did?
Off the coast of New York.
That's right, Gardner's Island.
Gardner's Island, okay.
And while some of his alleged treasure has been recovered, there are still rumors and legends.
That more remains hidden.
More to be found.
It just goes to show that these stories of hidden treasure,
but they endure.
They have this enduring appeal.
They tap into our sense of adventure.
Yeah.
The possibility of uncovering secrets from the past.
Like a tangible link to those legendary figures.
A chance to connect with history.
Well, as we prepare to wrap up this deep dive into the world of pirates.
It's flown by.
I know it has. I'm curious to hear your final thoughts.
Okay, shoot.
What key takeaways do you hope our listener walks away with?
I think it's important to remember that piracy, it was far more complex and nuanced
than we realize.
Than the romanticized version we often encounter.
Right. And that behind the myths and legends, there were real individuals.
There were.
With their own motivations, struggles.
Moments of both darkness and brilliance.
Exactly. From those earliest accounts of piracy in ancient Egypt to the stories of women pirates.
Defying the odds.
Challenging societal norms.
It's incredible.
We've seen how these individuals navigated this world of opportunity and danger.
A very complex world.
Their stories remind us that history is never black and white.
Never.
And there's always more to discover.
Always more.
Beneath the surface.
So the next time you encounter a pirate tale, whether it's in a book, a movie, or even a news report.
About modern-day piracy.
I encourage you dig a little deeper.
Question the stereotypes.
Consider the historical context.
And remember that behind every swashbuckling adventure,
there's a human story.
Waiting to be uncovered.
Well said. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you later.